Joshua,
Talk to me.
thanks for coming on, man. First of all, how are you?
Feeling good, man. Been looking forward to this convo. So yeah,
Yeah, we have a lot to get into. Well, how was your day today, by the way? How
not
was
bad.
it?
Knocked out a couple to dos earlier, and then just came here.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, I like that. So yeah, let's just get right into it, man. Have you always been a Christian? And if not, what made you get into Christianity and wanting to get into all this, everything you do with Truth is Studios?
Right. So definitely haven't always been a Christian, but
Yeah.
I was raised in a Christian household. So my parents are both like pastors and a pastor's wife. Um, Grew up in the church, but I always told my parents like I don't believe this like you do. You know what I mean? And with time, I think with pushing into it, God revealed Himself to me. I actually made a prayer. I prayed, God, if you're real, show yourself to me. And it took a while, but eventually He did. Actually, when I first moved to California, I think me being isolated and having some time to myself kind of just like allowed me to be a little more sensitive to what like is going on in my life. And eventually, I did kind of like come to the conclusion that God is real. Immediately got baptized and made the decision for myself. What I appreciated from my parents was that, of course, they didn't like force me to like they didn't really force it on me, but eventually it did kind of stick. And since then, I think having both the experience of being a Christian and not being a Christian, I was able to kind of empathize with those who aren't, and also like um, kind of try to solve like bridge that gap. So like people say, the problems that bother you the most are sometimes the problems that you're supposed to solve. The problem that bothers me is um, people not seeing the importance of having a relationship with God. And I because I understand probably why not. I think a lot of leadership today has probably let this many people of this generation down, and just the way they pursued, people being believers. And I kind of have been building solutions to kind of like make that process of becoming a believer or understanding what that's about easier. And that's, I think, one of my biggest, if not my biggest life goal, to just help people understand and connect with God. And we're doing that through media and technology. And yeah,
Absolutely. We'll get into what you do with media in a minute. But
of course.
before that, tell me through what was the time period of when you told your parents, this isn't something really I believe in or I buy. And then coming into you actually believing in that and all these things. What was the time period, the time frame of that, and you moving to California and all that?
So I would say it's hard to. I would say like God's been working on me the entire time. Growing up in the church, although I was a I was a Christian and then it kind of wasn't a Christian.
Right.
I think that I was exposed to that information. So like
Right.
even though I'm not like a super Christian at that time, I am being exposed to message after message each Sunday. I am living in a Christian household, listening to my parents say, this is why we do this is why we don't do that. But it wasn't until I was about 21 that I made it, what I would consider a conscious decision to be a Christian. And I really actually believed the message. The entire time it was really kind of like flip floppy. I'm not gonna lie, I did have moments where I would, profess my belief in God prior to being 21, but it didn't really, in my opinion, land. That it didn't really land. That information didn't really land in good soil. Like I was easily shaken. You know what I mean? Like I would say I was a Christian, and then something would happen that would just like make me say, you know what? I actually don't believe this, and I would
Right.
go back and forth. And it wasn't until I was about 21 that I really locked in with it and said, you know what? Like I truly do believe this, and my actions did show that from that point on.
So 21 and you're currently 30, I think, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so it's been almost a decade, give or take.
yeah,
It'll be a decade next year.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, how do you think your life would have been different if you just didn't go down that path?
Honestly, it's hard to say, but I don't. I definitely would be. My life would be a lot worse. I can say that through my relationship with God, I've gotten a better understanding of who I am and how I should contribute to the world. And through that, I've gotten a sense of fulfillment. And if I didn't have an opportunity to find myself through that process, I'm sure I'd be pursuing things that wouldn't be fruitful. You know what I mean? I'm sure I'd be pursuing things that uh, probably just wouldn't give me a sense of like wholeness in life. Like I think being whole is a very important thing. Like how you see yourself, how you show up in the world. I think prior to being a Christian, these were all things that were ego based, or just based in things that are of the world, not based in things of like strong foundation. You know, so, and when you live life that way, you know, you have ups and downs, but essentially there's something missing. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, I think I don't know exactly where I'd be if I was a Christian, but I know I wouldn't be in a place that's as whole as I am like today. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you decide to, become a Christian and all that, and then I know you make your YouTube channel, Truth is Studios.
Yes.
And it's been really developing over the years. It's been very great. Tell me more about that and what you do with Truth is Studios.
So when trying to solve the problem of helping people better understand God, you can't ignore like how effective media can be in doing that. Like media today shapes a lot of like people's perspective on the way they see things. And me looking at it, like just in the Christian media space, I felt like there was content that I wanted to see that I didn't see. You know, like that was helping people better understand God, but that wasn't maybe as churchy or wasn't as corny or whatever. So that's kind of like, once again, a problem like that I seen that I figured that I might be able to help solve. So that's kind of like what birthed it. Like initially my work was more so like technology based, but just seeing the importance of media, I figured let's go ahead and kind of get into the media space and make some content that we want to see for like in the Christian space.
Absolutely. And I think you were very convicted to do that because I understand. I mean, we were talking earlier, you were in pharmacy school. And it really was pulling on you to go pursue this. So you actually left school to go do that, which is, how is that? What pushed you to take that risk? Because most people wouldn't be brave enough to take a risk like that.
Well, one, I think I got a better perspective as to what I was running at, So like being in college, we say, I want to be a doctor. We say, I want to be a lawyer. And many times I know for me, I didn't necessarily have a firsthand experience as to like what that would be like until later on, So like, granted, I did shadow doctors. I did, stuff like that in college. It was so when I grew up at the time that I didn't really process it.
Right.
But then once I got to the point where it was, I was getting ready to actually practice as a doctor, I'm realizing I will literally hate my first day at work. You know what I mean? Like my initial yearn to be a doctor came from just a genuine want to help people. If you asked me at the time, I'd say, hey, I want to help people better themselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. And in order to do that, I can help people mentally, I can help people spiritually, but I need this understanding of the body to help people physically. And knowing that, that's kind of like my pursuits. But as I learned more about what it takes to be a practicing doctor, I realized, hey, I can probably help people physically, but I don't think this is the way that I'm supposed to be doing it. And I think just realizing what it cost. Like everything has a cost associated. By cost, it just means what it takes to get something done. Doing this podcast has a cost to it. You have to have a certain capacity to get certain things done. And I just wasn't prepared to pay the cost to be a doctor. Like when in class, I'm just thinking to myself, man, like I don't want to be here. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think it also kind of pushed me out, I guess is what I'm saying. Like everything, like greatness is attractive, right? If you look at Dave Chappelle as a comedian, or you look at Jay-Z as a rapper, you might think to yourself, I want to rap. I want to be a comedian. You look at a plastic surgeon with a Lamborghini, you might say, I want to be a doctor. But then when you have to go through what that person went through to get to that position, you then realize quickly that you don't want to pay what it costs to get there.
Right.
Like I would not want to be a comedian telling jokes in some random like comedy club with like 3 people in there. I would not want to be. I don't know what it takes to be a rapper, but you get my point. Like I think that like when I realized what it costs to be a doctor, I was like, I don't have what it takes. Look, everybody you can do anything, right? But at the end of the day, you have to make a choice on what you want to do. And slowly I realized, look, I'm not. I think I can contribute to the world in a different. I want to contribute to the world in a different way. And the opportunity cost of like exchanging my time for this versus something else just wasn't something that I wanted to do. And it was a hard decision. Like I had to tell my parents about it. Like I remember I came up with like a PowerPoint presentation to my parents of like, this is how I'm gonna pivot from health to technology. I'm gonna fix my resume. I'm gonna do this.
Right.
And they, to be honest, they were really like not really rocking. You know what I mean? Like having African parents, you already know it's like, look, doctor, lawyer, you don't got too many options.
Right. Armenians are the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
I'm talking about tech. They're like, hey, like I don't even know like what is Facebook? What is Google? You know, they knew what it was, but you get my point.
Yeah.
If you're not talking engineering, they're not really seeing technology or something like that, like you could break into. But yeah, so like for me, that's kind of like I think that's kind of like what made me kind of like pivot. But it was hard though. Like and I'm not gonna lie, like I was scared doing it. Like I didn't do it like just knowing this is gonna work out. It was like, dang, like I don't know if this is gonna work or not. You know what I mean? And luckily, thank God, things kind of like are working out now, but I didn't know that at the time.
To anyone watching this that is like they want to start a media company of any type, what is like one or two things you'd tell him or her to for sure don't do this, do it this way instead? What's one thing you would say, you know, don't do this, but do this instead?
Well, I think definitely like ask yourself what your like goal of that media company is.
Right.
You know, because if you look at different business structures, media is one of the most difficult like business models versus in comparison to many other like ways of making money. You know what I mean? So like don't get blindsided by like views and things like that and just think there's all this money behind it, because making money in media is very administrative. It's very like organized. It's not as like what you see on the front end is the back end is very different. You know what I mean? So I would say if you're trying to get into media as something you want to do full time, you got to understand the business of media, how money's made, and be able to like quantify how that's going to sustain like the life you're living. Your favorite influencer may have like be making 100,000 a year. Making 150 through like a job is way easier.
Right. Yeah.
What's his name? Chris Rock has a joke that like his neighbor is a dentist. You know what I mean? Like Chris Rock did all that crazy, like to be Chris Rock was way harder than being a dentist was. But his neighbor is a dentist. You know what I mean? So like I think if you're getting into media, you got to understand that like it's not like financially like, yeah, you can make millions doing anything, but it's not what you think a lot of the time. And like, if you're doing it for money, you're doing one of the, like you're picking one of the hardest paths to make money in comparison to other things. You know what I mean? But like, really challenge your why. Like, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to get into media? Is it really something that if your why ain't that big, you just want to make money, you might be able to do it through something else. And of course, everything needs media too, though. Like if you're a dentist, media can help you. But like, you get my point.
Yeah.
If that's your primary business model, then really think about it.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is really think about what you want to get into and what your why is. You
Yeah,
have to have your why figured out.
Yeah, and maybe get creative on like after you learn how the business works on how you can like build a sustainable business model, right? Because YouTube AdSense is up and down. Like, you know what I mean? Like try to figure out a way to like get consistent pay, or like something that you can like build a business on is also something that I would kind of think through if I wanted to get into the business of media.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because exactly. Yeah, just keep it short. But yeah.
No, absolutely. I hear you. That's good advice to give to, anyone that wants to get into that type of business. Tell me a little bit about how it was interviewing Dr. Umar Johnson. I saw the interview and he was really on the roll.
No, man. So honestly, like going in, like just the thought process of even setting up the interview, I kind of was so like, you hear people saying like, especially like in the Black community, how can I trust this book if my slave masters gave me this book? Or how can I trust the Bible? You know what I mean? If like, like they're saying Jesus was white and Jesus probably was maybe Armenian, who knows, right? But
right.
But I think that so going into it, I was just trying to think what's like an impactful way of like explaining to people that like if you're African American, you're involved in this story and like you're not like, cut out. And so many people are talking about it. So many people, have their explanations of the truth, but it sometimes just isn't impactful enough to like have people actually like listening to it. Like if you go on YouTube right now, there's people who explain to you, look, Jesus wasn't white. Look, like black people are part of this like Bible story. But although they're saying it, people aren't listening. So I was like, okay, who's somebody who's like in this space who's like bold enough and loud enough that it could draw attention? And that's kind of how I ran into Umar. But it was iffy because one, he's not a Christian, right? Like so, like
No, right.
having that conversation, I'm like, okay, like this could really go left. But like I think if we kind of wrangled it in, it'd be okay. And I mean, it was crazy talking to him. Of course, like just coming in, like you just don't know you don't know what to expect.
You
I never
never
met
know
him
what to
before.
expect with him. Yeah,
But he walked in, it was all love. He was dumb
Yeah.
cool. I could tell like he coming in, he didn't know if it was gonna be like how it was gonna be for him. Because with these religious conversations, sometimes you get pressed out. So I could tell when he came in, he was kind of like, okay, like what type of energy are these people on? This is about to be a debate. This is about to be, and I know myself. I know I'm like, although like it was a debate, I know that I'm not like I don't have like ill intentions. And I think like
No,
with time he kind of realized, okay, all right, these guys are cool. They're not really just trying to, get a clip of making Umar look crazy or anything like that. And I think it was cool. I learned a lot from that interview though, like having interviewing somebody who's like so opinionated. I learned a lot about just like how to like, have conversations and maybe like, and what I respect about Umar is his opinion. Like, I think when doing podcasts or doing anything, like it's important to at least have one.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like whatever your like stance is, be bold about it. And I think like that's a good way to live life too.
Sure.
Like although like you may be right, you may be wrong, whatever you believe, like if you really care about people, you should be like strong about your beliefs. You know what I mean? Humble enough to be like changed, but at the same time strong enough about what you believe if you really want to help people. And I think that's something I respect out of him. Like he believes what he believes, and because he thinks his thoughts can help people, he's bold about it. You know what I mean? And yeah, like I mean, I think that's all you can ask from anybody. Like yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say is the biggest thing you learned from him? Is it just the power of having an opinion, or what do you think is the biggest thing that you learned from Umar Johnson, Dr. Umar Johnson?
Man, the biggest thing I probably learned from him, I think, was how extensive his knowledge goes on like some of these like Black matters. Like if you talk to him about what's going on in the Black community, he has his like hand on the pulse of a lot of like these like current issues. Like if somebody got shot in Detroit yesterday by a police officer,
Yeah.
he'd know all that information. Like if like something's going on, you know what I mean? Like he like you could tell that like he's very like astute on what's going on, because sometimes and I think that shows to his care of like our people. You know what I mean? Because you could say, oh, I care about XYZ community, but your knowledge base and your actions is really what will like prove if you care or not. And I think, yeah, like me, kind of like when you meet him, I don't agree with him on everything,
Sure.
but I definitely like respect his just you could tell he cares. You know what I mean? Like you could tell he cares. And I'm just like, I think that's probably the biggest thing I took from it. Like if I care about helping people get closer to God, I should be able to take a Bible and say, this is where this is where that is. I should be able to speak to my faith from a place of excellence versus just, saying you care about something, but not doing, the homework or not, you know what I mean? Like I respected how he was like, you could tell he was leaned into what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Going into a little bit just more about Christianity, my personal experiences have been, well, I grew up in a family. It was a Christian family. They were, Eastern Orthodox Christian family. And they were very heavy into the Orthodox Church. That's just what they believed in. And I didn't really, it just didn't relate to me, because anytime I would go to these places, yeah, the church looked beautiful and everything, but when you go into the ceremony and everything that they're doing, I had no idea what was being said, because the way they would speak, it wouldn't relate to me, and I quite literally wouldn't understand it. Part of the reason was because it was all in Armenian. That's one thing. I do speak Armenian, but the way that they would speak it, it was like a very, it was, I don't know if it was ancient, but it sounded very ancient to me. And it just wasn't something that I could relate to because I'm like, okay, this person that's giving this, doing this ceremony, they're not, it's, I just don't relate to it. So what happened with me personally is I had some family members that they went to an evangelical church, and we went to that church, and that was a little bit more relatable. But my parents weren't really big fans of us going to that church because it was going outside of tradition. So we went, but it was a little bit. There was some hostility going because they just weren't fans of it because they had good intentions just because they wanted to keep the tradition of what their family members gave them, and they want to continue that tradition. But we went to that other direction, and at the moment, going to an evangelical church, I had more of an understanding of like what Christianity is. However, the issue that I see with it is it's too emotional. That for me at least, at the time, there wasn't any logical reasons to believe. It was all emotional. So I was
at that church. It was what you're saying,
right? At that church, yeah.
Okay.
And to me, it was why should I bank my whole life on something that's too much of an emotional doing? It's kind of like if you meet a girl and you really love her, but
what do you mean by emotional? What about it was emotional?
There was really no type of like. How do I explain it? There was no logical reason to believe. It was kind of just, okay, Jesus existed. He lived his life. He died. He resurrected. Or, Adam and Eve. This is what happened. But when you would ask, okay, why did that happen? Why did this happen? There was really no answer to it.
Did you get a chance to ask that and get no answer?
Yeah. Or the questions you would ask, they would answer it, but at least to me, it wasn't sufficing of an answer. Okay. They would kind of be like, this is just how it was. And they wouldn't really answer the question.
Okay.
So that's what, at least when I was like a teenager, that's what kind of made me go away from the faith. Do you see people having that struggle? Because I'm sure if I've had it, other people have had it too.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because if you look at just what being a Christian's about, right? At the end of the day, there is a jump of faith that's involved, right? Like it's not like there is always going to be a faith aspect to it. So when you speak to emotion, I think what you may be speaking to is the faith. Be like how do you prove this? Because you could prove everything to a certain point, but at the end of the day, like if you can't see God in front of you, it's going to be hard to say this is what it is. But where you were justified is in your questions, and I think that that's why I have an appreciation for like apologetics, right? People who defend the gospel. So that's essentially what apologetics means: the defense of the gospel.
Yeah.
And typically, especially with people of our generation, many of us have gone to college. We're the most educated generation. What you see is that when those questions arise, there isn't so many times a good enough answer that like can make somebody better understand what's going on. But if you talk to the right person, a lot of the times they can make sense of many of the questions that you have in a way that can kind of like help you actually become a believer. And that's actually something that helped me a lot, because as someone who asks life's biggest questions, I, for a long time, also couldn't find certain answers to things. But eventually, I did find certain resources that did. And I think that's sometimes a great way to become a believer. It's not just faith. It is also logic-based. Like, I'm not just sitting here saying I'm a Christian because I just believe for no reason. My questions have been answered with time to the point where I'm confident in this belief system based in logic, not just confident based on a feeling, which it can seem that way sometimes, especially if you don't have an understanding of like an individual's life story, right? If you look at somebody and they're like, I believe God, and you ask them why, and they tell you something that isn't necessarily logic based, you could make an ignorant like download of, oh, they just got sold this. But everybody's life situation is different, and although they may or may not be able to articulate it, many times that decision is not just a faith one, but it is logic based, and they might not be in a position to be able to like explain to you how. But if you were to like be in their shoes or have a window into their life story, you might better understand how they got there. So that's also why it's important to like look into the Bible for yourself, because tradition can dismay you if that tradition doesn't align with how you see life. If you go into it like if you're being told about the word of God, if you're being told about the story of Jesus through somebody, they are an intermediate like part of like that delivery. So
what do you mean they're an intermediate?
So like if I tell you this is why I believe God, right?
Sure.
Me and the way I tell you that message is molding it to who I am and how I speak and the traditions that I buy into. But that's not the word in its purest form. You take a Bible by itself, you download that differently than if you receive that word from a church. And that's why it's important to figure it out on your own too. Like a lot of like what I understood about God was clarified easily from me just connecting directly to God's word myself. Reading the Bible, I'm like, oh, so it's really just, you know what I mean? Like when you read it for yourself, it's this is God's word in its purest form. You know what I mean? The Bible's God's word, and even that has different translations, but it is God's word pure. You get to a church, you listen to songs, that stuff can kind of like, depending on how you receive it, it can throw you off, which it shouldn't though, but it can. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I understand completely what you're saying, and I have those questions too in my head, like, what is the greater purpose of life? What I've noticed is a lot of people do have thoughts like that. I would say most people do. Some people think about it not too much. Some people think about it all the time. I do think about that all the time. Like, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life? Why are we here? The chance of being born is very, very, very small. How come you were born? What purpose do you have here? So that really led me to, when I got older, I did go to another church because I knew there was a pastor that was very into apologetics, like you said. And yeah, I contacted him one day and I'm like, I'm trying to make sense of more things. Why don't we have a discussion? We sat down and he kind of explained to me why he was a Christian. And what really started getting to me personally is at least it seems to me that the central teaching of Christianity rests on Jesus Christ's death and resurrection. That did he actually resurrect? Because if he didn't resurrect, then I don't see a point in believing Christianity. But if Jesus resurrected, then okay, he is the person that he claimed to be. And talking to him, he talked about the historical context behind Jesus' death and his resurrection and the evidence that has shown. I talked to him, and then there was also another man that I talked to named Gary Habermas. Very nice man. He's actually a resurrection expert. And I looked into the historical life of Jesus again and, his death and resurrection. And it really compelled me. And so I'm thinking if he did really rise from the dead, then okay, Christianity is true. And looking into his work is what really compelled me. The issue that I have, though, is how do I explain it? I see this a lot with people that think a lot, or they have anxiety. They still think, well, what if? Well, maybe he's just saying this, the pastor I was talking to, maybe he's saying this because he wants to sell me something. He wants to sell me his way of thinking. Or the resurrection expert, very kind man, don't get me wrong, but I'm thinking, okay, but he wants to sell, a way of thinking to me. So at least my experience has been, I'm never truly satisfied with an answer. Or like experientially, they say you're supposed to feel God's love. I have felt it certain times in my life in very, very small increments, but I don't know. I have asked God to reveal himself to me. Mm-hmm. Maybe his revelation to me was introducing me to people that showed that Jesus Christ did resurrect from the dead. There's very, very strong evidence for this happening.
And do you believe? So just to,
Do I believe
do
it?
you believe that Jesus resurrected from the dead?
It's not a simple yes or no.
Okay.
Okay, I'll tell you why. I don't know. Maybe it's not a satisfying answer, but
No,
it's
no,
not
but
a
I'm just,
simple-
but okay. So,
Yeah,
but it
go
sounds
ahead.
like you're like at least mediumly convinced that may have happened, right? Or wrong?
Okay, there's days that I sit there and I'm like, yeah, 100% it did happen. There's seriously days that I think that. There's other days I'm just I don't know.
And you don't know probably based on like out other questions that you may have that have.
Yeah, because there's things that happen that I personally don't believe in. But the way that I think about it is, okay, even if I don't believe in those other things, if Jesus Christ resurrected, then this changes things. You know,
Like
what
I know
mean?
I know you were saying that like you struggle with understanding how like God could send people to hell, right? And it sounds like that's one
Wait,
of the
that's-
outstanding questions.
So I would say the concept of hell is hard to understand.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe in it. And honestly, I do fear that happening. And then Adam and Eve is it's just a concept that I just struggle with.
Well, so
much.
let me at least
go
like,
ahead.
let me speak there. So I think I think that's a great question, right? Like
Which one? The hell? Which
well,
question?
both. Like trying to make
Okay.
sense of an Adam and Eve is very interesting, and and then also asking the question of why would God send people to hell is also like a logical question. You know, if you care for people, like why would you send people to a place of forever burning, right?
Yeah.
And like I'll say this before I even get into answering that question.
Right.
I've gotten to the point as a Christian where God has proven himself to me enough times where when I don't understand something, I lean into the word from a place of like trust that, okay, I may not understand this, but it doesn't make this not true, right? But it takes a while to get to that point, right?
I don't know how you got there.
Yeah. I got there.
sounds
Well, I didn't just get there just out of nothing. It took me a
Right.
while of like God proving himself for me to realize, okay, look, my parents have said this, they probably are right, even though I don't understand, type of thing.
Right.
But another method of thinking that I think can help a lot of times when you have these questions is to think of what is the alternative, right? So in the case of God sending people to hell, right? What is the alternative? So if instead of there being a heaven and a hell, what else could there be? Let's think about it. Let's do it in real time. So one,
Okay.
there could be the option of every sin doesn't exist, right? So because the reason why you go to hell is because you wronged someone, right? So in theory, if it wasn't possible to wrong anyone, sin didn't exist, and everybody just is a believer and everybody just goes to heaven, right? That's like the utopia version of it, right? That's one alternative. Another alternative is whether you sin or you don't, everybody goes to heaven, right? Now, the reality of it is, if you sin but you're a Christian, you go to heaven. Being a believer, just you believing in the story of Jesus is what buys you into heaven. Whether you sin or you don't, well, everybody sins. You're going to heaven. That's the reality, right? So now, if you talk about the first alternative, everybody going to heaven, that kind of cancels out the option of sin in general, right? Which, granted, I'm just trying to make sense of it, but if let's say sin didn't exist, do humans even have the freedom of choice anymore? So like if let's say for instance, if sin didn't exist, the option to do someone wrong is no longer even an option.
No, so that's why I believe in some type of moral structure to the world. There has to be.
Well, then if you believe in a moral structure to the world, right? So then let's go there then.
Because if there was no moral structure, I could kill you, and people could say, "Well, it's fine.
Well,
I do whatever I want."
Well, so okay. So then, if there is a moral structure, right?
Yeah.
So we have the freedom of choice, and now there's a moral structure. If heaven and hell didn't exist, what is the consequence for someone who decides to just do wrong? Like and like that's just like and they decide to not buy into the belief of like being a believer in Christ.
Right.
There's no punishment. So if I today kill your mom, kill your dad, do all this crazy stuff, then and nothing happens to me, I go to heaven just like you. How would that be like a wise God who built that system?
No, and
And
I
granted,
get
look,
what
I don't
you're
have
saying. Go ahead,
life's
go ahead.
answers. I don't have life's answers, but I think
No
many
one does.
times
We're just having a discussion
but
about it. Yeah, yeah.
many times when you think about like these questions that we have, sometimes they ignore the alternative. You know what I mean? Like, and I think if you think about like the other ways that the world could be set up, they still end up with like these questions. Like instead of if heaven and hell didn't exist, you may be sitting here right now saying, why would God let the person who raped so and so go to heaven? You know what I mean? Like there'll still be a question. So it's like at the end of the day, somebody, something, if you believe in the concept of there being a God, build a system, right? Can you think of a smarter system? I think is like something that you have to do whenever you challenge something. And if you can't think of a better way that things should be done, then your question, although like coming from a good place, is like you get my point. Like
What's my question?
your question being, why would God send people to hell?
But okay. So again, I know you don't have all the answers. I don't have. We don't. We're just discussing ideas.
Of course.
I understand what you're saying. Believe me.
Yeah.
The only issue that I see is it's seen from a very macro perspective. For example, you know how you just said earlier, well, if there was no consequence, you came, you killed my family, you did whatever you wanted, and you went to heaven, and that's not fair either. I get it, but let's think of it in a more practical way. And what I mean by that,
Okay.
people that live decent lives, but they don't subscribe to Christianity, why?
Would
They
go
don't
to hell?
deserve it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So then,
Yeah, go
first of
ahead.
all, so to answer that question, I think that like first of all, it's a great question,
Right.
right? Like all right, there's all these good people. Like, why should they go to hell, right? It's a great question, but I think that you also then have to think about like the fact that going into heaven is some. Well, I think for one, you have to think about yourself, right? Because sometimes we think about hypotheticals for other people, right? So we'll say, man, like, what if there's that, like, person who never heard the gospel but was such a great person, right? Like, and when you think about that, yeah, it makes sense. But unless you know that person, then you're really speaking on a hypothetical that you haven't like firsthand experienced. Right now, as we're talking, I'm in front of you telling you about the story of being a Christian. You've been in churches, you've heard the word many times.
Many years, yeah.
So you've been exposed to it.
Yeah.
So, but the example you're giving is somebody who hasn't lived a life that you can personally empathize with. So your worry, although it's coming from a good place, is hypothetical. Because unless you say, I have this friend and I know that he's never been exposed to this to this message, then you get my point. Like at the end of the day, like although you're questioning from a good place, it is from a place of theory versus like a place of like reality.
But how's that theory though? Because I'm telling you, I know people in real time
Yeah.
that they're not necessarily Christians, but they live decent lives from,
But I guess
so
what I'm
how's that a
saying
theory,
is,
though?
but although they're living decent lives, have they been exposed to the message of being a believer?
Yeah, they have.
So then what they're also doing is, see, being Christian isn't hard. Like Jesus did the hard part. It's just believing, right? So like they could just be dealing with what you're dealing with of like struggling to buy into the message. But it's not like the opportunity to be a Christian is like not there for them. You know what I mean? Like they could decide today, you know what, I actually like believe in this, like the story of Jesus and become one. Like you see where I'm going with this. So like at the end of the day, it's like if you've been exposed to the message and you also maybe even have an inherent knowing of like God is real, you've decided also to reject that message to a certain degree. Granted, look, everything I do is to help people better understand why they should, and I think we need more people doing that to better help usher people in.
Sure.
At the same time, I guess what I'm saying is like there's also that conscious choice that people are making. It's not like it'd be one thing. If
Of course, it's a
yeah.
conscious choice.
So although you can say it's not fair that like a good guy like doesn't go to heaven, that good guy didn't have to like be a rich guy. That good guy didn't have to be a perfect guy to get into heaven. We don't get into heaven because we don't have sex. We don't get into heaven because we're like these perfect people. We get into heaven because we believe. So they had an opportunity to is what I'm saying. And if that opportunity didn't exist, I think that's when, we could talk about what's fair and what's not. And that's just my perspective. You know what I mean? Like we have an opportunity to accept or reject the message. And I think that I think that's kind of like.
So would you say if we have the opportunity, would you say, because there's two essential views, I think free will and determinism. Free will, it's up to you. Determinism, it's all decided for you. I think that's what it is. Do you think we have free will?
I think that I think it's mixed. I think that God, ultimately being God, knows what decisions you'll make. And I think that we as humans have the opportunity to make a choice. So God is outside of time. He knows the beginning from the end at the beginning.
Are you Calvinist?
So that's the thing. These words that get thrown on it. This is my perspective today.
Okay.
Calvinism.
I see.
Calvinism,
Right.
I think, leans towards the perspective of somebody who believes that God, either you're going to be predetermination,
Right.
and someone who believes that you'll be if you were going to be a Christian, you were going to be one, and if you weren't going to be a Christian, you weren't going to be one. I think that if you look at God, right, God knows who's going to be a Christian, who's not going to be one, right?
Okay.
You as a human have an opportunity to make that decision. Whether or not it was predetermined or not, it's not even necessarily we're talking in theory, but in reality, you need to just make a decision. You know what I mean? Why
Wait, but do you
people
mind
who
if I-
debate these
Yeah,
things
go
are
ahead,
trying to be God. Is it determined? But at the end of the day, whether it's predetermined or not predetermined, if you don't have that information, what does it matter to you?
Yeah.
If I don't if I'm a pastor, right, and I'm trying to get people to believe in God, I don't know whether you are supposed to be, you were destined to be a Christian or you weren't, right?
Right.
All I can do is put you on the God that saved my life and see if you can accept it
Right.
too. That's all we got to worry about. Whether or not, whether it's predeterminism, Calvinism, whatever, doesn't matter
Right.
to me because I don't have that information.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think sometimes you have these Bible nerds who talk about these things that don't matter. The story, granted, it's a big Bible. It's not that complicated. It's a lot of it is repetitive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the main story is pretty simple. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And bro, I'm not gonna lie. I think we lose people with some of those conversations because it's not the crux of the faith. You know what I mean? We have different denominations.
So what's the crux of the faith then?
The crux of the faith is that Jesus is our way to grace. So in life, there's sin, there's us making decisions that aren't God will decisions.
Brother,
And
believe me when I tell you this, I want to believe that probably 10 times more than you do. The issue is,
yeah.
and I apologize for interrupting you.
No, bro, please.
The issue is, I understand that you're saying it's theory, but if you don't mind me pushing back a little bit, it's not fair to say we're trying to play God or it's theory, because these are experiences we live in real life. You know what I mean? If I know people that are decent people, how is that theory? Or you're trying to reconcile big questions in your head, because what Christianity demands of you is very great. It's, put down whatever you're doing, follow Christ. That's fine, but you just need to know in your heart that you're making the right decision. Because personally in my life, at least when I was younger, 6-7 years ago, I've had multiple, okay, let me get into the faith. Okay, now I'm out. Okay, now I'm in. Okay, now you people don't want to keep doing it. I'm sure if I've done it, other people have done it too. So
I did it.
Okay, you've done it too. So there's just a lot of questions that you have a hard time ruminating in your head. I don't think it's fair to say it's theory though.
Well,
You know what I mean?
well, so let me take a step back.
Sure.
When I say that it's theoretical, I guess what I'm saying is sometimes it's majoring on minor things versus focusing on the major things in the context of like what matters, right? So when we talk about these different, questions, although they're great questions to have, they're not like they're not the meat and potatoes of the faith and understanding what the faith is about. So when you have a question, I one I respect the fact that you have a
You've
question
been
for
very
one.
good about it.
Yeah, I
you've been
respect
so
it,
nice
and
about it.
I want you to like pursue an answer there.
Right.
I'm not saying that like don't pursue an answer. I guess what I'm saying is when having certain conversations, know where like they fall on an importance level when it comes to like understanding what the faith is about. You see what I'm saying? Like, and like I think that's pretty much all I'm saying. But I will say that my number one goal for people is just to keep pursuing the understanding their faith, because the bigger issue here is not what you're talking about right now. See, you're in a position where you're saying, look, I'm trying to grasp my head about this. I got these questions, and you pursued answers. That's
For almost a decade now.
that's the minute percentage of today's population. Most people say, look, I know there's probably a God, because I mean I'm a human, and this couldn't have just happened. Like, I know there's probably a God, but I don't know who that God is.
Yeah.
If you ask them what being a Christian's about, they can't answer the question. You ask them what being a Muslim's about, they can't answer the question.
Right.
What's a Buddhist? They don't know. That's most people. And they're just living life just, dang, I mean, look, I'm trying to get to this money. Look, I'm trying to make something of my life. Just putting the whole spirituality just on the shelf. Like, look, I don't know, and I'm like not really pressed to find out. Like God got to find me type of thing.
I love that you're bringing this up, because I think biblically, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's more verses about finances than there are about, other things. There's a lot of talk about finances and things like that. I don't think it's wrong to be quote unquote ambitious. Sky's the limit. Pursue everything that you can and, try your best. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. A lot of Christians, to what I've heard, they have a problem with being ambitious, wanting more in life. Is there an inherent issue with that?
Well, for one, I think there's a difference between. I think it starts with like what your heart posture is in general. Like if you have a heart posture for people, and you have a heart posture to help people, helping people costs money. Yeah. So for one, if you're trying to help a lot of people, like you're saying, I feel for the homeless, I feel for this, I feel for that. It's gonna be hard to do that without gathering finances in somewhere, like in some way, right? So like inherently, help requires money. You know what I mean? The Bible talks about love. It talks about helping your neighbor. It takes money to do that. You know what I mean? So like I think that in itself just cancels out like Christians like shouldn't be rich, or Christians shouldn't be XYZ. But then let's say if your heart posture is from a place of like greed, if your heart posture is from a place of like wanting to like harbor everything for yourself, then that isn't a Christian perspective, right? Like if you want everything just for your own life, then I think that is a little flawed of a perspective to have. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to, make a lot of money so that I can just, continue to just feed whatever needs I have. Like if I got the mansion, now I need the yacht. If I got the yacht, I need the blah. That's I think when you pivoted away from like the heart posture a Christian should have. You know what I mean? I think Christians should pursue to do good. Christians should pursue to help. But in doing that, like you should also be a good steward of the resource that you have. Yeah. If I have billions of dollars, and when I look at that billion, I just think, how can I help me? Then I don't think that's a Christian's perspective to have. I think God gives it to you so that he can get it through you. Not to sound like one of those rhyming guys, but you see what I'm saying? Like I think that like we're here to help, and it takes money to do that, bro. You can't do that without bread. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah. Going back to something we were talking about earlier, because I know we talked about the concept of hell. We, deliberated about that a little bit, but I definitely want to touch on the concept or just Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
A lot of people. Well, let me just start off by saying this. What I have seen a lot is people are really thirsting for some type of greater purpose. Mm-hmm. This is why we've seen a rise in, people consuming Christian content. I think Jordan Peterson's biblical lecture series. He looks at it more from a psychological perspective, but that has been blowing up. There's a lot of pieces of content that people are starting to consume, and that's fine. But having said that, can Adam and Eve and all that, can it just be like some type of a symbolic or like a psychological thing? Because that I have really been thinking about that more and more, that I don't think it could be a literal thing. I think it may be a psychological type of teaching, or like maybe it's some symbolic type of teaching. What do you think? Or do you think it was a literal physical thing that happened?
So I think a couple of things are worth saying within the context of the conversation of Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, we have to be aware that like what our perspective is like as humans today is very different. Like what we've been exposed to is very different than what the beginning of time is gonna look like.
Of course. Yeah.
Right? Like so like whatever theory you take, the Big Bang, evolution, Adam and Eve, whatever theory you take, it's something that you've never seen. Like if we came from monkeys, you didn't see what that looked like. You know what I mean? If the world it started from a bang, you didn't see what that looked like.
Right.
So to see that or to hear about it is going to be outside of the context of your life experience, right? So then when you look at it like across the board that way, bro, I'm a biology student. The first book of the first chapter of bio says the Earth started from a Big Bang. You know what I mean? So like,
I don't personally even believe in that, because I think there had to be. So I do definitely believe in God, because there had to be a catalyst to create the universe.
right? You can't get something out of nothing. Who knows?
Out of nothing, nothing comes. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
So, but either way, it's like the beginning of like science, the beginning of the Bible, the beginning of all these different books is describing something that you've never experienced.
Right.
Is my point. Now, when it comes to like understanding the story of Adam and Eve, I think that like there's many theories on it. That like, is it literal? Is it like more of like a story to explain something that's hard to like physically tangibly explain? There's different perspectives on that, but I think that there's still things that like are more simple that you could take from the story without having to be a biblical expert, right? Like there's people who've dedicated their lives to like studying the Bible, and they're still debating to this day on like little verses like here, there, what was really meant, what was really here. But if God really made it like what I love about God is that being a Christian doesn't require you to be like somebody who can fully download like exactly what like was intended by certain what God wanted you to know. He makes clear. The rest of it, the rest of it is fun for certain people to figure out, like, oh, what was this? What was that? Was the rib of Adam really a real rib? Was it a theory? All that. It's a great question, and I love that. I'm interested in that. But God didn't make being a Christian something that like requires a certain like IQ. Being a Christian, but I'm not saying all that to like disregard your statement, but I'm saying that to level set the situation, right? Now, I still got questions about Adam and Eve. And I'm still learning it too. As far as like, but from reading it, like, and what I'm explaining to you is there's a man in a library with a white beard right now who still has questions that may not get answered until you know what I mean? Right. But at the end of the day, one, it's not pivotal to this faith, and two, we're on an earth that's floating. Do you know how it's floating? Do you know, like, the Earth is in the space right now?
Yeah,
we're on like a sphere that's just in the world. You don't know how that happens, and you can and there's a nerd who's figuring that out right now, who still has questions.
Right,
it's the same thing. Like every like knowledge base has an end that really actually isn't an end. It's still being like figured out. Science is literally the pursuit of knowledge, but it's just like the latest theory. 100 years from now, what like a bio book will need to change because the nerds at the end of it were figuring out the small details.
The deeper we get into science, the more it points to a creator.
Well,
so I definitely do think
that's
God
the perspective. Yeah. I believe that too. Like granted, who knows? But the Big Bang and let there be light could be the same thing. Who knows? I'm just, but I get what you're saying.
There's a theory I heard of when I said God made the earth in 7 days. This is just a theory I heard of that day we conceptualize a day in 24 hours, but a day could have been 20 million years back in that time.
That's another
That's a
debate that's
theory that I
happening. That's
heard,
another
actually.
debate that's happening. Was it literal days? Was it
Figurative.
figurative?
Yeah.
It's a back and forth. Luckily, being a Christian doesn't rely on that. You see what I'm saying? Just like how the archaeologists today debate on how old the earth is or how old the pyramids are. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and that's why I think when questioning the Bible, you also have to like align that questioning with the other options. Like, you know what I mean? Because sometimes you can question one thing and then act like the other options don't have their outstanding questions as well.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like science is not like they
It's
don't have
not the
answers
end
to
all,
everything.
be all. No,
You know what I
it
mean?
isn't.
Or
I don't think so.
archaeology or whatever. Take it how you want, but
Yeah.
you're putting your faith in something. At the end of the day, you're putting your faith in something. Yourself, your science, the Bible, regardless, whether you're a believer or not, you believe something. And that belief system that you have has questions that if you pursue them that aren't answered.
Right. So, okay, do you mind if I give you a different perspective?
Talk to me.
I hear what you're saying. I get it. But from someone, let's say there's someone watching this, he or she is debating Christianity too. They have the same exact question that I have. Okay, it makes sense. I like the way it's structured. I just can't logically compromise the beginning of the world being a literal, Adam and Eve. Maybe it's not literal. Maybe it's metaphorical. But what do you say to those people, though, that they want to believe, but they can't conceptualize things? I know you're saying we can't get caught up in the details and all that, but
I'm not
that's
saying don't
kind
get
of a
caught
big
up in
deal,
it.
though.
I'm not saying don't get caught up in it. I guess I'm saying that's a great question. If I have the answers to that question, like a specific question they may have about the book, I may answer it. If I don't, I'll plug them to a resource that does.
That's fair.
The guy with the white beard. I'd say like talk to him.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I do think just to keep it fair, like when questioning, just make sure like you realize if you don't have the answer answered, like if whatever your question isn't answered in this book, then where did you find the answer? That's my whole. I'm just pressed for your pursuit of information, and most times for most people, they don't even pursue this at all. That's my whole thing. Like if you're just an atheist who and you just believe like nothing is nothing and like it is what it is, you still have a belief system that whatever your system is, do you challenge it? Because what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? What if the Christians did have it right? What are you risking by being wrong? If heaven and hell is a real thing.
Yeah.
Or even just if your on earth experience could be better by you being a Christian. And you're just ignoring, you know what I'm saying? And look, that's why I'm like
a lot more in common than
no,
you think
but
we do.
I'm trying to tell I have no issues with you, bro.
No, I'm just saying we think way more alike than it may seem like.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of this that I do agree with you on. I have the deepest amount of respect for Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do some days think that, the death and resurrection of Christ is really something that happened real time. He is who he says he is. He is the Son of God. I deeply do believe that in my core some days. But I don't know. We're just there. How do I say it? Because I'm not, I'm just having discussion. I'm not a qualified religious expert, but I'm just trying to pursue truth as much as you are, because it's very important questions. Because if I have things wrong, I'm in trouble too. Because I guess you need to pursue what's true. Finding what the truth is tough for certain types of personalities. I would say more so than the others. Me personally, I can never see one perspective and just go with it. I always see every perspective, and that makes things harder.
And I understand.
So you know what I mean?
No, but I'm the same way. And I think that sometimes I
know you're very smart.
But I think that knowing that if I were you, I'd try to pursue people who are big thinkers who came to the certain conclusions, right? Like at the end of the day, like you're not the first person to have these questions.
No.
And there is someone who had these questions who's landed and you know, as a believer. There's someone who had these questions who's landed as a non-believer.
Right.
Pursuing those, and those people wrote books. Those people left information. Those people are like, you know what I mean? And I think studying that is what the pursuit looks like from where you're at now.
Yeah.
And just continuing to pursue it, because like these are life's biggest questions. So they're not gonna just be simple answers, but at the same time, you're not the first person to have these questions. That's why books are so important.
Of course.
That's why all this stuff matters. You find the person who has like, you know, describes himself how you would, who's a Christian, and the books they wrote, you'll learn a lot. Find the atheist who has your questions and the books they wrote, you'll learn a lot. And eventually you'll draw your own conclusions. It's okay to be in a position now where you're like, look, I'm not convinced. I was there for a long time.
No, but here's the thing. I am convinced sometimes.
Yeah, but so you're not fully convinced.
Right.
So like just keep pursuing it is all I'm saying. And that's why I'm saying I don't have no problems with you, because you're pursuing it. Where my gripe is mainly, bro, is where it's like just not even pursued at all. And it's easy to ignore. So I empathize with someone who doesn't. Because when you like, if I have real life tangible issues, my you know, like my mom needs money, my you know, friends need help. I'm looking at homeless people. I'm looking at all this. It's easy to say, yo, like this theoretical God stuff is not like that important to my real life situation.
I understand.
So I get why people like don't necessarily actively pursue it, but what if that is actually what would help your real life tangible situation? I've gotten to the conclusion where I've realized that. So I'm trying to help people better, at least start getting to where you are of pursuing it versus ignoring it. You know what I mean? But like, I think this is how I got there.
It makes
asking
me
these
mad,
type of questions.
because like, how much do I have to keep pursuing? Like, it's been a long time. Granted, I have taken breaks, but there are some days where I wish I could just
one thing I will
come
say
to a conclusion and just kind of get over it, for lack of a better term.
One thing I will say though is like you have what's in theory and then you have what's in practice, right?
Sure.
So like you have like there is power to like being a believer. It's not just like,
oh, definitely.
No, but
Absolutely.
when I say that,
Yeah.
I'm speaking
There
on
is.
there is like an aspect to this of like the unexplainable, right? Or like things that like, and I guess what I'm saying is, if you are testing this out, there is the testing from a place of being a believer that also has the opportunity to bring revelation, right?
But what about if you have the fear that you're gonna mess it up because you mess it up so many other times?
Well, I mean, look, if you're still alive, you
still got a shot.
Okay, you didn't really mess something up.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think like the last point of like your test trial, like of trying to figure out what's up, could be functioning as a believer. You know what I mean? Like you could say all you want, like I don't know if this is gonna work, but you could just try it. You know what I mean? Like you could just, because there is something to like, like if let's say you do have a moment where you're like, you know what, I kind of do. You said you're flip flopping. Why not like actually when you do kind of like say, you know what, this might be it. Walk the life that like God instructs us to. Express your faith of even that one moment and seeing where that takes you. You know what I mean? Like instead of trying to predict the next 1,000 steps, you could just say, all right, look, I think I kind of believe right now. Let me go ahead and just jump on that and see what happens. Just a theory. But look, bro, I mean, I understand kind of how you feel. And like I said, a majority of my life, I felt the same way of trying to make sense of it.
No, I get that. You know, taking a step is sometimes the thing that's needed. What would you say about beliefs? Because what would you say about the law of attraction?
The law of attraction. So just to define it, I guess the law of attraction would be, well, how would you define the law of attraction?
Just the way that it's defined, that if you have an intention of what you want to do. Mm-hmm. For example, I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah.
I want to be a successful pet store owner. I'm just saying, I want to have all my pet stores all around the country.
Yeah.
And I put that thought out there and I work hard towards it, that I will be rewarded towards it. Do you think that's a good way of looking at things? Do you think that's false? I really like the way, Kevin Samuels talks about it. He's like, okay, you're basically talking about cosmic Santa Claus. And then Jordan Peterson, he said something really funny too. I think he's like, Yeah, basically God is like your bellboy. You're just ringing a bell and you're getting your desires fulfilled. But yeah, what do you think
Yeah,
about it?
I think whether you're a believer in any religion or you're just an atheist, if you have a perspective of just your thoughts or just your prayers are gonna get you anything, that's just not true. You know what I mean? Like if you're sitting to yourself thinking that you know, I just gotta believe and or I just gotta think about myself being a millionaire and I'm gonna be one. You already know that's not how it works. But I do think that if you think about it from a perspective of what you focus on and what you work towards will be what like actualizes in your life, then that is true, right? And I think it requires both thinking and action. You know what I mean? I think when people start talking about manifesting and like certain things where they speak to I'm name it and claim it or if like you gotta I think sometimes they overemphasize on the non-action of it. But I think there is some truth to just getting your mind right too, because everything starts in your mind. This microphone that we're speaking in started as an idea. Somebody had an idea that said, I want to, make a microphone. If it never came out their head, it would never be one. But it had to start there too. And even outside of producing things, just even your personal perspective on who you are is important too. Like if you don't know you are like capable, if you don't know you're if you don't know like you're an amazing person who's
Sure.
capable of doing great things, then you might need to tell yourself, I'm an amazing person who's capable of doing great things enough that you can believe it. But I guess what I'm saying is like if you're talking about the law of attraction as something that like just the thinking is the primary, then of course you're wrong. But it's a actualizing things in life it can't be simplified to one law. It comes down to a lot of different things to make it happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
What do you think about, because this is something I personally do believe in because it just makes life easier for me, is what's your opinion on karma?
Okay, so karma originates from a Buddhist perspective, essentially basically saying what you do comes back to you, right? I think that a perspective of karma is not one that I have, in the sense that whatever I do is something that like will come back to me. So if I slap somebody in the face, I essentially have a slap of some form coming back to me, right? I think that is not a Christian perspective, in the sense that Christians believe that through God's grace, there is a sense of grace on like the wrong that you've done, right? So like everything doesn't have an equal punishment, being that Jesus took on that punishment. So we don't necessarily have to. If I were punished for everything wrong that I did, I would not be where I'm at right now. If I got everything that I put out back to me, that would be like, I would not be in a good place right now. You know what I mean? I've wronged people, bro. I'm not like a perfect person in any way. You know what I mean? But I do think that having that perspective brings out good in people, because you end up treating people how you want to be treated. Yeah. If you believe in karma, then you're essentially holding yourself accountable by saying, I don't want to hurt you because I don't want to be hurt. But I think a better way of flipping it is, instead of just guaranteeing that if you do good, good will be done to you, and if you do bad, bad will be done to you, just treat others like you want to be treated. You know what I mean? Like be able to empathize with anybody living a human experience. But the fact that you've done wrong to somebody doesn't mean that you have wrong coming, because that perspective could have you living a life that doesn't acknowledge the grace that God has for our lives. And I think that's not a healthy place to be in. Because I've done wrong things that haven't been done to me, and I hope and I pray that they never get done to me. You know what I mean? Like if I stole from a store, now I open up a store and I'm getting stole from. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't think that that's like how, that's literally why Jesus died. Because he knew that if we were to get what we deserved, nobody would be like living a life that's worth living. The whole purpose of Jesus dying is, look, nobody's perfect, so here's God's grace to make up for the difference that you can't make, that no human can make. because we're making mistakes every day and we're getting better with time. But I like the fact that karma holds people accountable. I like the fact that when you do have that method of thinking, you're probably being a better person in the world. You know what I mean? Like if I think, yeah, like you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Biblically, do you? I know that's kind of a broad question, but I just want to know how you think. Do you take things um, uh, symbolically or literally? Because I know there is some things in the Bible that are symbolical, like there is, especially I think in the chapter of Revelations. But um, overall, do you have an overall perspective of it?
I think I lean towards like more of like just like a logistical, tangible way of like processing things. Like I lean towards like really kind of having to like make sense of like how that fits into my world, like type of thing. So like um with that being said, like I think I do process certain things literally, and but I am like also like able to process things that aren't as literal. You know what I mean? Because everything isn't literal. You know what I mean? So like, so just like how everything isn't literal in life, everything isn't literal in like when reading or processing the Word of God too. You know what I mean? So like you have to be ambidextrous and being able to like see things from both sides.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's just it, living a human experience and being a believer at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think yeah, like when I'm reading the Word of God, I try to kind of like I think just get into the intention of the writer and read it from like that place. And I think when doing that, it kind of helps filter whether or not like you should be reading this from a literal standpoint or a more theoretical one. But if I had to say, I lean towards the literal side when processing the Bible because if you maneuver too many things, then it can lose its like
The sense of what it's
the sense of what it's saying.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
That's actually a good point.
Like if like in Revelations, there's a chapter that talks about like 144,000 people, right? Some people process that as 144,000 like believers will be the only believers that are like end up like being like accepted into heaven. I think that's like somewhat of like what Jehovah's Witnesses believe, right? Others say, oh, 144,000 is theoretical, and it's really it really just means that like 12 times 12 is like a millions of people, and it's not really like a literal number. But then there's another perspective to have of basically saying that when you actually read it, that oh, this is actually speaking to like a specific group of Jewish people that may be like tasked with like helping bring believers during the end times. You know what I mean? So like I think that when reading like numbers and certain things and when processing in the Bible, like start literally. Don't just immediately like start thinking, oh, when he said 12, he really meant 1,000 times 1,000. Like I think you can start literally, process it from a literal place, and then like branch out to other things if it comes to that. But I really don't think it should. I think when reading the Bible, you can process things literally and still make sense of a lot of it. But of course, like I said, everything isn't literal. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Just like when we're speaking today. You know what I mean? Like I could say you're an idiot, but I'm laughing and you're not really an idiot. Or right. I could say you're an idiot. Yeah. You know what I mean? So context matters, things matter, and you have to be able to kind of like dissect any information that you're receiving from that place.
Absolutely. What do you think of this verse? Because it really stands out to me. The beginning, no, what is it called? I want to make sure I'm not messing it up here. But
no, I mean, it's all good.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom.
So when you read that verse, right, the fear of the Lord, right? When you hear it, it's like, wait, what does that mean? So like when you dissect the root word that was originally written, it comes down to reverence. Reverence is essentially ultimate respect, right? So I think the beginning of, the fear of the Lord, if you replace it with the reverence of God, is the beginning of wisdom. Essentially, that's saying that you having respect for God's word is a great, like, will have you live, like, living a wise life, even if it's wisdom that you haven't grown into understanding. And like I was saying to you earlier, I've gotten to the point where even if I don't understand why like God's word is the way it is, I still live under it. I live under that instruction. And with time, I grow into understanding why. And it's happened to me enough that I realize it. Like when you're in 8th grade and the high schooler tells you, yo, your grades are important. You're like, grades don't even matter. Yeah. And then you become the high school senior who's telling the freshman, yo, grades matter. You know what I mean? And so I've been under this enough to realize, even if I don't understand something, it doesn't mean that like I'm right and my lack of understanding is like I'm super smart and I just figured it all out. I'm living under the reverence of God's word now. If he says something that I don't really fully understand, like to this day, I don't get why we can't have sex like until we're married. I guess I'm still wrestling. But I'm deciding to try to wait till marriage. You know what I mean? Okay. But if I had it my way, I'd paint it out a little different. You know what I mean? But like, you get my point. So it's like, I think that it comes down to like, yeah, I think when I read that verse, I think it's basically saying that if you have reverence for God, the reason why it's the beginning of wisdom is because you don't even have to have understanding for everything. Due to your respect, you actually function as a wise person. If you listen to your parents, you don't understand why you got to eat your vegetables, but if you eat them, you're functioning as a wise person. You know what I mean? And so I think that's kind of like essentially the way, like that's what that verse is saying.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see. Do you think if, let's say you weren't raised in a Christian household, why should they be a Christian?
Well, they should be a Christian because it changed my life. You know what I mean? And I didn't get here from a place of just listening to someone say it changed my life, and I just was like, oh, if it changed yours, it changed mine. Yeah. So I think that if you're debating these things, just pursue that information, right? Like, and study it for yourself, right? Don't just listen to anybody. Study it for yourself. Look into it, and it's important. You know what I mean? And I would say that if you're genuinely pursuing it, that's all I ask. You know what I mean? Like, if you're genuinely pursuing it, that's all I can ask, right? Just don't be in the place of most people who aren't even trying.
Sure.
That's all I'd say. You know what I mean? Like, because I could tell you the story of how God showed himself to me in my life, but that's individual to me. And like, if I were to say, God came on earth and I seen him, if I seen him and you didn't see him,
then it doesn't
matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I think that like you should just pursue it. It's all it did for me. It just started from hey, God, if you're real, show yourself to me. And he did. You know what I mean? And that in itself was a walk of faith. Like I said, with when you have that moment of like feeling like you may believe, do something about it.
Sure.
Act on it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I think with time, like my prayer is that God will find you. You know what I mean?
I really appreciate that, genuinely.
No, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, again, I would love to have a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Jew, just sit down and they talk about I'd love to do that someday. I mean, that would be cool. But
no, yeah. I think that would definitely make for interesting conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Joshua, thank you very much for coming on here, man. Tell me, where can they find you?
Where can they find me, man? So at Truth Is on Instagram is our contents platform. Personally, at _Darko is where my socials are. And yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Bro, thank you.
Thank you, my man.